Hi guys, welcome to the Tash and Bex Flex. We are really excited to have Joey Marzinsky here today with us. Hello, Joey.
Hi, great to be
Gary.
with you.
I just want to give you a proper introduction. Joey is a retired licensed psychotherapist with over 35 years of experience working with and studying the thought processes of psychotic and criminally insane patients in some of the most volatile psychiatric institutions in the nation. He has held the position of Second Lieutenant Arizona Civil Air Patrol and Assistant Scoutmaster. His formal academic training comprises a BA in psychology from Temple University, a master's degree in counseling from the University of Georgia, and 2 years of study in a PhD psychology program. He is also the co-author of an amazing journey into the psychotic mind, breaking the spell of the ivory tower. Joey,
Ooh,
welcome.
What an intro.
I know.
Yeah, I got to get that co-author out of there. I'm the author, not the co-author. I don't know how co-author got in there.
Oh, well, you are the author.
He's the author of that.
Yeah, I didn't make that up. There's a co-author on there. Anyway, Joey, welcome. We've had a lot of issues getting to talk to you.
Oh yeah.
And we've made it, and it's taken a couple of weeks actually to get where we are today. So we're very excited to have you. We've been looking at the work you've been doing. Would you like to tell everybody, because you're the first person I've come across that looks on schizophrenia and the voices as being slightly different to the mainstream narrative on that?
Slightly is an understatement.
So what happened? Tell us. Your career began and you went into psychiatry. What happened? What changed the way that you look at what's happening to people that have mental illness?
Well, I didn't go into psychiatry. I more went into psychology.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
And I started work at probably the largest psychiatric institute on the planet at the time. There were like 10,000 patients there, Central State Hospital in Milledgeville, Georgia. And, when I got there, I mean, nothing in my education prepared me for what I was going to encounter there. Nothing. But what I hated it was that in college, you could not get access to a clinical population. You had to take their word for what reality was, what the truth was.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, memorize all this stuff and spit it back to us. And the better you can spit it back, the higher grades you get. But there was no way to check it out.
So what you're saying is they weren't allowing you to go out into the field and actually do research yourself.
They don't let anybody go out into the field and look for themselves. You try to get into a psychiatric hospital, tell them, hey, I'm a researcher. I want to talk to some schizophrenics and see what's going on. You watch how fast they kick you out of there.
Mm.
Oh no, we can't take responsibility. It's too dangerous. This, that, they won't let you in there. It doesn't matter who you are. You have to have some political connections almost to get in there. Same way with mental health centers, same way with private psychiatric hospitals, state private hospitals, they won't let you in.
No, and it's even the family, it's very difficult to get in and see the patients.
Right. And it's worse over there from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, the mental health system here.
We have a friend at the moment who's being held. He's calm, beautiful soul, beautiful person. But they don't like what he's saying, so he's being held as we speak.
Yeah,
they've had it for weeks.
Yeah,
that's they're draconian over there. I mean, they're bad here, but they're draconian over there. They're weaponizing psychiatry over there.
I agree. Yeah, for the little experience I've had of it through a personal experience, yeah, it's pretty horrendous.
It is horrendous here. Yeah,
it's very barbaric.
Yeah.
So when I got to finally got into this. It was a giant hospital. There were 10,000 patients there at the time I was there, 200 buildings, and it sprawled over 3,000 acres. So it was the size of a small city.
Wow.
And this was back in the 70s when, this hospital was in the middle of nowhere. We had to drive 30 miles to Macon to get a hamburger. There was nothing out there.
Yeah.
So they had staff dorms, and we stayed in the staff dorms. So that was good. It was, almost free housing. And what they taught me in graduate school was that these voices were hallucinations, and that's what they're teaching everybody. And everybody came out brainwashed that the voices are hallucinations. And when I got in there, I watched these people, and they're walking around, and they're carrying on conversations with something or somebody that I couldn't see. And I was expecting it to be word salad, like just gobbledygook, like
nonsense. Yeah, absolute nonsense.
But it's not.
Nothing that made any sense. But the first one, and this goes back when I was in undergraduate psychology at Temple University. I remember they made us read a paper by a clinical psychologist who said, if two crazy people met each other and they both had the same delusion, one of them would have to give way. One of them would have to change their delusion to something else. And even as an undergraduate, I'm looking at that and I'm going, why would that have to happen? Well, they're both nuts. Why would one of them have to change? I mean, what's the deal there? No, this guy wrote this formal paper, clinical psychologist. So I filed that in the back of my mind. And there's one day when I was at the hospital, I was making rounds. And here's this new fellow appeared on the second floor of the psychiatric building that I was responsible for. And he's walking around and he's carrying on a conversation with somebody, and he's arguing with them. And there was nobody around him. I mean, he's just carrying on this vociferous conversation with someone or something. So I crept up on him to see if I could hear what he was saying, because it sounded like a coherent conversation, and it was. But, I was too far away to make out what he was saying. So I kind of crept closer and closer, and then he spotted me, So I asked him, I said, what's your name? You're new here. I haven't seen you before. What's your name? And he turns and he looks at me and he goes, I'm Jesus Christ. And I look him in the eye and I say, oh no, I'm Jesus Christ. To see what he would do, because of what this clinical psychologist wrote
then you're both
probably
the same
20 years ago. So I'm standing, on pins and needles watching what he's going to do. And he kind of looks up and he's like thinking, and then he looks at me and he goes, okay, we can both be Jesus Christ. And he walks away. And I said,
lovely.
And I said, what else have they lied to me about? Because I wasn't trusting. My trust level for authority was in the dumps anyway, even before I got there. I mean, it was just inbred into me as a kid. I just didn't trust authority. So I went, okay, what else? What else did they lie about? And,
so that was where your inquiring mind really started to question, to go further into your own ideas and instincts about it, what you were seeing.
Yeah, because what they were saying didn't make any sense when you got onto the front lines. The mental health front lines. I mean, where the battle is taking place. I mean, a lot of what they taught me made no sense. So here's these conversations these guys are carrying on with something or someone. I mean, there was one patient I watched who was arguing with the voices. The voices were telling her to leave the hospital grounds. And here she was arguing with them. She didn't want to leave the hospital grounds, and they're kind of pulling her around. So it wasn't word salad. What they were experiencing wasn't word salad. It wasn't a hallucination, kind of like what I thought a hallucination was. They're carrying on a conversation with something or somebody that I couldn't see.
That's very real to them.
Very real to them. It was a coherent conversation. It was, complete sentences, complete ideas. You just couldn't see who they were talking to.
So it's not like second person derogatory thoughts or anything like that. It's an outside voice that they're talking to. It's not something within their head.
It's not your inner critic, is it?
Well, it can be both, but it's usually within their head.
Yeah.
And they see it as they see it as their own thoughts.
Oh, so they do see it as their own thoughts. That's interesting.
Right, because
how far? Sorry, Joe, just trying to prop this up. How far is that? Because that's what they're told by the professionals.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I work with people with schizophrenia in a different way to you. I'm a healer and I journey, and I've done that to do healings for years. But then in 2015, my work changed and I started to see different things, demonic entities and stuff like that. And then I worked on a schizophrenic and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
They were so swamped with entities, I couldn't see them. I couldn't see them.
So they were
in
like
my
journey.
journey.
Over them.
No, they were just so swamped. It was just like, imagine a pop star being swamped when they get out of a car and it's just whoom.
Yeah.
But it was, and I pulled, and it took me ages that he slept for a couple of days and the voices had gone.
Wow.
Gone. Yeah. So I concur. That's why I'm so excited to speak to you, because I see these things.
Oh yeah.
And I take them off people. And
have you worked with a lot of schizophrenics?
Well, a few,
but also haven't you noticed that it's also across the board in mental health? So also people with severe depression will have these entities and attachments.
But they look different. Severe depression, they're like these big, like the first one I saw was like, you know, when you see the genie in the lamp in the Disney thing, and there's the tiny little lamp and he rubs it and then this massive blue thing comes out. They're like that. They're huge.
Well, that's depression.
Yeah, because what it does is it just sucks all the life. So it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And in the end, it can come around and it can smother this person. And I believe, I've said this to you, I believe that's what suicide is in mental health.
Yeah.
It becomes so big.
It consumes you.
It consumes you.
Yeah.
And you lose the battle. So I'm with you. I think, well, I know.
So when you see a schizophrenic person, then you said it's different with depression. You see this big swamping entity. So what do you see with a schizophrenic patient? Are they smaller, more sort of aggravating, nattery type things, or?
No, they're more like they're like demons, as in what we would call. I don't see them as demons. They're just low vibrational entities that feed off us. But there will be that classic kind of demon type entity. People that they just look like normal people, you know, but they're evil. So
the energy is low.
What in
the attachments? Yeah. So
they're all low vibrational,
very low,
low vibrational demonic beings. But some of them look like normal people. Some of them look like demons. I've also seen characters from gaming, and I take them off.
That doesn't surprise me.
So some of this attack is AI as well. This is in the young, like 19, that game a lot.
So you think they're entering through the gaming?
The gaming kind of seems to create wormholes in their energy body where these things can come in.
Really?
But, you know, Joey, this is all just what I experience. And obviously I'm journeying, I'm working in the fourth dimension. So I'm seeing these things in a energetic way. They're presented to me in a way that my brain can understand.
So that's your perception of them, isn't it? Your understanding.
But when I take these things off, they get better.
Mm-hmm. And that's the key. That's the key.
But well, the other key is the aftercare, because oftentimes there's so much fear around it that they don't even know I've done the work because their parent doesn't want to scare them. So I can't have an open conversation with them and say, you mustn't be scared of these things because they can be removed. You've got to keep your vibration nice and high. You've got to keep good music on, dance, go out into nature, don't game, and don't allow them back in. That's
it's not
really
another one waiting.
Yes, because they'll come back in.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you have to seal once you get rid of them, you have to seal off that person.
Yeah. I do the protection and everything, but the problem is left to their own devices, often they go back into same patterning.
Right. They have to increase their vibration.
Yes.
You know, so they have to get on a spiritual path and stay there because they attract them. These things are like sharks that smell blood.
Yes.
You know, they move in on low vibrational frequencies on people. You know, they'll pull them in like a magnet.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know what you're saying is absolutely bang on. And that's why I got so excited and wanted to talk to you. And I think that's why our mics were turned off, because they don't want you and I to have the conversation.
No, you know, and there's other things. There's other things you could do that I can feel them, but I can't see them. And I've only heard them once when I prayed to ask, I prayed like, okay, let me experience this. And the one time, and it tried to kill me that one time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've been attacked a few times. It kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah.
You get attacked.
Yep. Yeah. I've had some severe attacks. They hate the 23rd Psalm. They can't stand it. It's like burning them with a blowtorch.
Because you can't bring them out.
Yeah. So if they repeat the 23rd Psalm, I've had several patients tell me, it's like throwing worms on a hot frying pan. That's how they react to that. The 23rd and the 91st Psalm. So
should they do that as a daily thing, a bit like a mantra, or just when they feel that they're vulnerable and being attacked?
Well, they ought to do it every time they get attacked.
But in between, because I would, if it was me, I'd be sort of doing it as a mantra almost as part of my day. A preventative mantra. Yeah. And these things will make them forget to do it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now, so what I've been finding, since I can only feel these things, and I can't feel them over the Zoom. I mean, I felt them on the psych ward. I felt them when I was working in the emergency room. But I can't feel them on the thing. But virtually everything they tell these patients are lies.
Yeah.
Not 98%. What they want to do is upset them to the point where they turn their emotional state negative, and it's only then that they can take their energy.
Right.
They can't take their energy if they're positive.
Yeah.
So that's why all the stuff they tell these people, you're no good, you're rotten, nobody likes you, those people are laughing at you, you're stupid, you're ugly. I mean, all kind of stuff like that. And it's the same script. I mean, I've talked to people, I'm in Arizona now. It was the same thing when I worked, 2,000 miles away in Georgia. These voices were telling the patients there the same thing they're telling them here. And they're, now I'm working with people all over the world, and it's the same thing. It's like they were all created from the same rotten script.
Yeah.
It's like they all go to some kind of crazy school in the ether somewhere, and they learn how to torment people.
Yeah.
And they learn what to say, and it's all the same stuff.
And they're all working the same script, aren't they?
And did you notice that, Jerry, when you were starting to do that with your patients and you started collating the information, you started to realize this pattern, didn't you, in the script that the voices were sort of saying?
The same across.
Yeah, across. Yeah. What sort of things were it that they were projecting, if you like?
Well, what they do is they can enter the person's mind, so they can put their thoughts in the person's mind. And we're all taught from the time we're little kids that every thought that comes into your mind belongs to you. Who else could it belong to?
Doesn't. I don't know. I'm with you on that. I don't think our thoughts are ours.
No, Emanuel Swedenborg, I think 300 years ago, he brought that up. He had access to heaven and hell. So he would disappear. He would go into a trance, and he'd go and he'd talk to the people in heaven and hell. And the hellish ones would put thoughts into the people's minds, and they sound just like their own thoughts. It's the same timbre. It doesn't get darker or deeper or anything. It's the same. It's like all the thousands of thoughts you have going through your head on a normal basis. Only the content is very different.
Yeah.
It's you're no good, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're worthless, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, so the person sounds like he's talking to himself, but he's not.
No.
So I saw that these things were lying to these people, and I would ask them, I said, do you believe what they say? And they say, no, I don't believe what they say.
They said they said,
well, yeah. Then I said, if you don't believe what they say, why do you listen to them? Oh, because they're so damn believable,
So trickster energy.
Say what?
Trickster energy, like a trickster, like a con man energy that's coming through, isn't it? They're being conned constantly by their supposedly own thoughts, which are intrusive thoughts, obviously.
Yeah, they're psychopaths. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So, when I got to the state hospital, all the staff there were convinced that these things were hallucinations because that's what they'd been taught.
Yeah.
And none of them were curious about what these things were saying. And I could see in my patients that these voices were affecting their behavior, and they weren't affecting their behavior in a good way. They were sabotaging them. They were getting them to verbally and physically attack other people. You know, we had a vocational school there under the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, and we were trying to get these guys ready to go out in society and work. So they were training them job skills.
Yeah.
You know, but the schizophrenics would sabotage themselves, even though they'd get close to finishing the program, and then they do something to sabotage themselves reliably. They get into trouble, they'd go off their meds, they'd get in a fight, they'd do something, they'd escape, they wouldn't finish the program. They did something to sabotage themselves. And after checking closer into it, it was the voices telling them to do these kind of things.
Because the voice knows that they're about to pull themselves out of that low vibrational state of mind, and the voice, the entity can't have that.
Yeah.
Because it needs to survive. They're like, it's like a parasite. And when you say about the thoughts and stuff, and I've said this to you, there are entry points when I take them off. There are entry points where they actually have, like when I look in, because I have to fill the holes and heal it and get it all out. I actually see I can see into the person because they put things
tentacles.
Yeah, well, they're like probes. Or sometimes there are things that come out and they're like weird neon. There's a neon thing as well.
Quite artificial intelligence looking.
That's quite AI. Yeah. But it's what's that?
That's right.
Oh, I thought it's gonna. Sorry, Joe. I thought it was gonna stop our video. So yeah, but it's definitely always like I have to pull it out of. It's in the energy field, but it's also right into the body. I have to put it out, get rid of it, and heal up all these
and close up the wormholes.
Yeah, because otherwise, well, they're just depleted. They have to have a healing afterwards.
Yeah. So I can't see them. So what I do is teach people how to fight back against them.
Absolutely.
So they have those tools. So if they ever come back, they know what to do. And it's a battle. It's a spiritual battle.
Yes, it's a spiritual battle. Totally.
It's not. And the psychiatric mafia with their drugs, they're not curing anybody. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a festering sore.
Yeah.
The Western mental health system is a joke. It's an absolute joke.
It's embarrassing, actually, isn't it? It's
particularly mental health,
and it's just so backwards. It's so behind the times. It's never grown, or I think there's been a lot of money pumped into it. It's just been lock them up,
money and control.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what psychiatry is all about. Money and control. Those drugs don't heal anybody of anything. Nothing.
What would you say they do? They suppress and mask symptoms.
They basically suppress symptoms. That's it.
Yeah.
And with schizophrenics, the drugs are basically tranquilizers.
Yeah.
So they're major tranquilizers.
They don't stop the voices. They just tranquilize the person.
So they dampen it down
to a blur. They don't. They
can't hear the voices because they're so dampened down.
Oh no, they still hear them.
Yeah, but they're just so.
Oh yeah, most of them still hear them. It's rare when they disappear totally, and the only time I've seen that happen is when they catch them early. When they just start, when they give them the drugs, that seems to knock them out. But once they're there for a while, all it does is just suppress them and calms them down.
Oh, so they still hear the voice.
And they still hear the voices. So, and those drugs are very toxic. They're poisonous. They're some of the most dangerous drugs used in medicine today. And what they found out, and psychiatry doesn't tell people these things. They'll tell them, oh, your eyes will get blurry, you'll feel sluggish, your mouth will get dry, the major symptoms that they're going to notice right away. They don't tell them that it rots out their peripheral nervous system, that it rots out their brain, it shrinks the brain with long-term use, that it causes neurological damage. What they do instead, when the neurological symptoms start appearing from the drugs, they'll counter those with more drugs like cocaine. So here's these, akinesia starting where the person starts shaking and quivering, and then they get another drug and they put it in, throw that in there and just keep poisoning them with these antipsychotics while the symptoms of the antipsychotics are tamped down by the cogen.
Wow.
So they're just masking the symptoms of the symptoms.
Of the symptoms. So when you say, Jerry, that they still hear the voices when they are medicated, does it change in how they perceive the voices? So obviously, when you have a medicated like schizophrenic patient, they clearly calm down, don't they? So obviously that's the effect of having like a tranquilizer on you.
Yeah.
But to them in their head, is it still as much anguish, if you know what I mean? Just because they're physically not responding, is the anguish still?
And they're still tortured.
Yeah, the voices weaken. Okay, but it's still the same crap. You know, they're still being fed the same stuff. But with the voices weakening, then they have all the side effects from the medications.
Yeah, which are really
Okay?
hard.
So those side effects are awful. You know, even at the state hospital, we had a hard time keeping those people on those antipsychotic drugs. They would take them, they'd hide them under their tongues, they'd spit them out when nobody was looking. They would lie to the psychiatrist about hearing voices because they knew that if they kept complaining about voices, they would just get more drugs.
And the
Yeah.
drugs
And that's all psychiatry knows how to do,
yes.
is just drug these people. And they're in league with friggin' big pharma.
And
I mean,
it doesn't actually help. It doesn't cure it.
it doesn't cure anything.
You know, so it's not even, to me, it's not even very effective as a medication, is it?
What it does is it just quietens them down and makes them manageable, like they're cattle. It just keeps them so that they can then be managed out of society.
Just calm down and get out of my face. You know, kind
So
of
it makes them easy to manage. It means that they're
Yes.
still locked up in a facility because they're still mentally unwell, but they are manageable and people don't have to put the work in to sort of like.
and they can sleep better. You know,
And they can sleep,
but that's about it. None of those psychiatric drugs that the psychiatric mafia dishes out cures anything. None of them. And that DSM, that Dictionary of Statistical Diagnoses thing that they come up with what are there, 200 and something in there now, or 293 or diagnoses.
Are they really?
They're all made up. There is not a test that exists on the planet that can verify any of those diagnoses or test for them. There is no lab work. There is no EKG, EEG. There are no clinical tests.
There's no palpable physical.
There's no tangible thing, is there? No. So is it all done through like probably very, very outdated, almost questionnaire type things? You know, probably made in the 1970s, where you basically got a script that you go through. And you tick a certain amount of boxes, and then you get a score at the end, and then that gives you
and that's their Bible. So they come up and they make these things up. From what I've heard, it's like a tobacco barn where they meet once every few years. 3/4 of the psychiatrists in that meeting where they make up these diagnoses are being paid by big pharma.
Mm-hmm.
So they set the bar, if you like. Probably with knowing that they're, you know, they are, well, there's an agenda there, isn't there?
There's an agenda there.
For big pharma. And you've got somebody on those drugs, you got them for life.
You got them for life, yeah.
Haven't you?
For life.
Got the
and then, as Jerry said, it does terrible things to their physical body.
So then side effects, medication.
Yeah. And then, of course, I suppose when you then become physically unwell alongside your mental illness, you know, that becomes probably bubbles up to the surface more than the mental illness often as well. So it's a good way again to mask the mental illness when you're consumed with physical problems as well. It's like a double suppression, isn't it? You're making them physically unwell as well as it's quite a it's quite a sophisticated, simple yet sophisticated little thing they've got going on.
There's a system going on.
So much for the Hippocratic Oath.
I kind of went to
these people. They're doing damage to these people. And that came out after the state hospital or mental hospital patients started dying and they started doing autopsies. The people doing the autopsies found something very strange. These people who'd been taking these antipsychotic drugs for a long period of time, their brains were shrunk like rotten walnuts. Whoa. And it was one after the other, after the other, after the other. So when they published this and actually got that article into a journal, which the psychiatric mafia and big pharma control the journals, so they finally got it out. And then when big pharma and psychiatric mafia saw that, they freaked. They went, "Oh no, it's not our meds, it's the schizophrenia. It's rotting their brains." And so the researchers went back and said, okay, well, let's see. So they started feeding it to rats and mice and monkeys, and found that long-term use of these antipsychotic drugs had the same effect.
They proved it, basically.
They proved it. So they, you know, they couldn't lie about that anymore. But boy, they sure don't bring it out when they're and I've watched scores of them as they were prescribing these drugs. Somebody come in with, you know, with schizophrenia, hearing voices. They go, oh yeah, you're schizophrenic. That's a life sentence. All you can do is take these drugs for the rest of your life. There's nothing else you could do. It's like Dante's Inferno, where, you know, above the door, it's like, all who enter here give up all hope. You know?
Yeah, it's incurable, isn't it?
It's incurable. That's what they're saying. It's incurable. They don't even know what it is. They have no idea what it is.
And I just wonder how you feel about the fear around mental health and mental illness. There's so much fear around it that it's
because they don't understand it.
Yeah, exactly. And
people don't understand it.
Yeah, and so that fear then stops people from probing and looking at what's really going on. Because
yeah, I did that, and there's good reason for that fear.
Yeah.
Believe me, there's good reason. Once you start poking around in the heads of the criminally insane, there's a very good reason to be aware. And you know, I've been scared out of my wits a few times poking around in their heads.
Yeah.
You know, it's but you don't need to do that. You know, the voices are entities. They're not hallucinations. And if you look at see what they've done, along with banning researchers from doing research on frontline psychiatric institutions, they've attributed the schizophrenia